I'm here today with Michael Alfaro. He has building companies for the last 20 plus years. He has been starting in the gym sector where he's got up to 15 gyms worldwide and partnering with Reebok. Then he pivoted into the digital space where he had a tech company with a digital streaming service. And now he's in the consumer packaged goods, also known as CPG, where his company has done over 15 million in revenue. So, Michael, I'm super glad you're here today. I think we're going to have a very interesting and valuable conversation. And I want to touch on some business aspects. I want to ask you some very industry specific questions, but I want to start from the personal side. So, the first thing I want to kick off with is from a personal perspective. I'm a 23-year-old guy in the entrepreneurial path, just as many of my connections, many of my peers. And the way I see it is that I'm right now really in my fundamental years. I'm really building my life right now in my young 20s. So, my first question to you is, for young people like myself, what is your best approach to really maximizing your 20s?
Man, that's a beautiful question. And thank you so much for having me on. I think one of my biggest things in life is trying to figure out how I can help my younger self, right? When I was 20, 23, 25 in the grind, and I only had one thing on my mind, which was either making money or being successful, right? Chasing my dreams. It was, how was I going to get there as quickly as possible? And I think, my first company I started when I was 19 years old. And it was on a credit card, $15,000 worth of equipment, opened up a little warehouse, gym space in the back, but I got right into it. And so I think you need to break your 20s into two key phases. So the first phase, right, let's just call it that, like late 19, 20, whenever you really start hitting pavement, you're on your own. It's the first kind of go into like I got to pay my own bills, or I'm chasing my own dreams on my terms, right? And at that moment in time, it's the first time you come into like the real world of like responsibilities. At that moment in time, most people, most young men and women, what they try to do is they try to just go make money day one, right? And I think looking back today, for me, and I can only speak on what really, really worked for me and how I was able to take those lessons out. And it was your first 4, 5, 6 years of your 20s, you want to try to develop the skills, the attributes to actually execute at a higher level in your late 20s, right? So phase one, let's break it up. Phase one is, say, 19 to 24, 25, give or take. And there's no specific age. I'm just using these two phases. And it's, man, surround yourself with mentors. Go into the craft that you think is most passionate for you, wherever your heart lies, wherever you love, wake up in the morning and you just love doing it, or if you can't find your why, you can't find your passion, try to find the things that bring energy into your life, right? So look at the things that when you're doing them, they take away energy. And then look at the things that when you're doing them, they're like, man, I could do this all day. It feels like the time is just like running by and it's like you're like a little kid. Those are the things that if you can truly find a way to make that a business or a service or a product and you surround your life around that, then go find the people that are doing it at a very, very high level and try to deliver value to them in some way that allows them in return to give you some of their time, knowledge, and learnings. And what you're doing there is you're just bridging the gap, man. You're just bridging the gap of knowledge of not knowing what they know. And if you can just take those learnings that might have taken them 10, 15, 20 years, and you can get that in a year or so, 2 years, you're so far ahead going into your phase two of your 20s, which is where now you've taken all these learnings, all these lessons, all these skills and attributes that you've taken from all these different people, mentors, experiences, online courses, YouTube videos. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there that you can get for free, basically. You just have to know what you're chasing, and then you go and apply it, right? So say you're in your career, or you're kind of out of a job, or you're making some money because you got to pay some bills in that first phase. Make sure you're allocating the time to build the resources and the knowledge, and then you go bet on yourself, man. Bet on yourself in your mid to late 20s, which is your phase two of your 20s, and go after it. If you got to eat ramen noodles and sleep on a fucking couch, you got to do what you got to do. But go bet on yourself. And I believe that nowadays you're getting a lot of people that really want to do that. They believe in themselves, which is phenomenal, man. This younger generation is almost like, I don't want to work for that other person, or I don't want to be in a situation where someone is forcing or telling me what to do. But jumping in day one, I think, is a big mistake, unless you're willing to take the punches and learn and know that it's going to take you a little bit longer because you're going to be learning those firsthand. So 2 phases. First phase, 4 or 5 years, just really absorb, learn, surround yourself with the right mentors and absorb all of the lessons and learnings that they went through. And then phase two, go apply, bet on yourself, and make it happen by actually doing the hard work that you learned.
It's super valuable and very interesting how you describe these two different phases where there's almost this pivoting point. Now, what I want to ask you as well is just kind of relating to this as well is you're stepping yourself now really in the spotlight with your personal branding as well. You're doing these podcast things like that. What made this decision to do that right now? Because you've already had such a tremendous success. Like the introduction describes your past 20 years basically. So why did you decide right now to really focus more on this personal branding side for yourself?
So I think there's two real answers to that question. The first one is when you look at manufacturing, which is the industry that I'm in, right? I'm a snack manufacturer, and we service some of the largest brands in the world, right? And these brands are over billion-dollar companies. And one of the things that I want to ensure I do, which is different than what all these other manufacturers are doing in the space, is that these manufacturers are old. They're not young, hungry, driven entrepreneur for like go-getter mentalities that want to be in front of cameras. They're this passed down generational manufacturing business that has been around since their great-great-grandfathers or their grandfathers, and they're 30, 50, 70, 100 years in the industry, running the manufacturer from small scales. So when you get this young entrepreneur that is driving innovation, that is hungry to kind of drive the growth when it comes to like the consumer packaged goods space, when it's into the creators, because I think there's a humongous growth pattern that is happening now. And we can get into that later in the podcast, but it's huge. And so I want to be a big advocate for that. And in order to do that, I need to be known as the guy that is actually driving these CPG products, right? These consumer packaged goods products, and launching these brands for these creators and other brands. And if I can position myself and add the value on a daily basis, I become the guy that actually helps them get it done. So that's on one side. And then on the other side, man, I just wish that like I had someone that was just real, that when was in the shit, they would say, I'm in the shit. And these are the heartaches and the pains that I'm experiencing. And this is whether it's, you know, not knowing a skill or trying to troubleshoot a problem or getting your first, you know, foot started or, you know, giving me the step-by-step playbook or, you know, kind of showing me what to do and what not to do in a real format. I think a lot of content that's out there today is almost like fluffed. It's almost like they make it pretty. You know, and I think that if I can actually deliver the true entrepreneurial journey, which is, man, it's hard. It's not easy. So anybody listening here, if you think this shit's easy, go pick something else. Go do something else. Go work for somebody that's going to write you a check and you're going to be, you know, nice and comfortable. Entrepreneurship is not easy.
So what I want to ask you as well is because you have an experience in different type of business industries, what do you see is really unique in the CPG business and why is that your current pursuit? And I'm also very curious what you see as evergreen overlapping methods or, you know, strategies you see in business that are very important overall, no matter what the industry.
So let's take the first part of that question, right? You know, sometimes in life you stumble into opportunities, right? And so nothing is fully formed. No idea is fully formed. No true plan is fully formed. You take your first step. And as you are progressing along that journey, things open up, right? There's new opportunities, there's new doors, and it kind of transitions you in. And that's what happened to me with the CPG space, right? You know, I was in the digital streaming fitness space at a very high level. And when my wife got diagnosed with MS and I came back to Miami from New York City, it was really like me kind of looking for what did I see as the mover and the biggest demand moving forward in the world. And COVID hits. And when COVID hits, you know, I love fitness, I love health, I love wellness. But one of the things I didn't want to get back into gyms. So I was looking at, okay, a good amount of my friends, right? Like they sold their companies for $340 million, had protein bars, or $1 billion protein bars. And I'm like, man, there's so much opportunity in growth, yet it was still so early. When COVID hits, then everybody's really worried about what they're putting in their body. Right? They're looking at their labels, they're reading ingredient statements, they're researching because they got all this time on their hands. And the truth is that people for the first time paused and they started to care about the impact of what they were consuming and they became smarter. And that just gave me more confidence to say, there's an opportunity to do things a little bit different in this space because the demand is going to be there, right? So you really need to see that there's enough demand for your product or service even before you start your journey. You have to do the homework. And so between multiple exits of, you know, other entrepreneurs in high value, you know, exits, all the way to seeing what happened recently in the market, right? This market kind of impact, then you start to predict out what are all the things that are going to roll out over the next 5, 7, 10 years. And is there enough runway and consistency on that pattern that's going to give me the confidence to allow me to set up, build the business, and then 3, 5 years down the road, really position myself to capitalize on that opportunity, right? I'm a long-term player. I'm not the guy that wants to make $1 million tomorrow. I think it's easy. I think you can do it. But to build something that's like really, really long lasting, you really have to bet on a lot of determining factors, right? From positioning in market, et cetera. So let's get back to answering the question, why CPG, right? And there's two things. Number one, ever growing kind of demand coming from people being more aware of what they're putting in their body. And two, when you look at the creator space today, how has that evolved over time, right? You look at online coaching today, very popular, right? Programs, blueprints, all these kind of like evergreen, formats that you're talking about. And it's because you can easily create a structure. You could do it one time and it could be recreated with a very high profit margin, and you could do it from anywhere in the world. Everybody technically has a camera and they can speak on something. But when you look at the consumer packaged goods space, there's complexity to understanding that world. How do you come up with the right product? Where do you find your manufacturers? How do you get it manufactured? How do you come up with the money? How do you establish the company? How are you going to, are you going to set up an e-com? Is it going to be a distributor-based business? Are you going to go to retail? How? What are the price points? There's all these levels, right? And so that means that the barrier to entry is much higher, but the opportunity is much higher. So when you take a Mr. Beast, for example, right? He built the digital content for many years, but at the end of the day, you're sitting on this gold mine, right? This gold mine of consumers and people that are your community. They're your raving fans. But at a certain point, you start to ask yourself, what the hell am I doing, or what can I do with all of these people who are fans of mine? And then you need to connect with them in an authentic basis. So you have to reverse engineer how you actually add value to that fan, to that community. And then you say, okay, my community is younger demographic. They sit and watch my content because all these crazy ideas. What do they probably like? Oh, well, they're probably snacking. Okay, cool. Well, let's launch a snack brand. Let's launch Feastables. And let's try a bunch of different things. Mini cookies, let's try chocolate bars, let's try gummy bears. What hits? Oh, cool. Chocolate hits. Drop the rest, focus on chocolate, re-engineer the product to make and improve that product, listen to the consumer feedback, and then go all in. And then that allows you to take, right now, they're crushing. They're crushing it. So if you take that same model and you go to cosmetics, look at what Kylie Jenner did with her cosmetics brand, right? Look at all these other people that are either in cosmetics or in skincare or coffee, or they launched a product, leveraged or added value to their audience and created a business out of it that became an extremely, extremely valuable, sticky business because there was no middleman. They didn't have to go to the retailer. They didn't have to go to the distributor. They went direct to consumer. They had the highest margin because they already had the connection with that brand. That's where I believe there's such a huge opportunity for creators, because the wave of like paying for personal posts, you're with this energy drink brand, then you go with that energy drink brand, then you're with the next one. You're watering down who your relationships are. You become kind of like this brand whore, and now you're whoring yourself out. And really, at the end of the day, it's all for money, and your fans realize it. And so at the end of the day, that's only can last so long before they drop you, and then you have no real control of your value, your money, your equity, nothing. But when you build something for yourself and you bet on yourself, in 2-3 years, that business, and maybe faster for some, right, depending on the impact and the community engagement they have, that business is real brand equity. You have value, not just in the revenue you create, but in the value of the enterprise. And that equity is where I believe the real creators are going to start leaning into, because the upside there is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars.
Very interesting, and it makes sense that how it relates for you stepping into this more personal persona to connect, let's say, with creators and things like that as well. Now, I'm curious, what is the main opposite side of this? Because you're obviously helping or giving the ability for creators who are in a certain stage to give them their own brand of packaged good, that brand equity almost. So What is the opposite side of that? Is that mainly actual manufacturers who you're helping to connect with these creators and personal brand type of profiles, or what is basically the other side of your market?
On the business side, on the business model side for me, I believe that I want to help the different phases. And so there's three key phases of an entrepreneurial's journey, right? Your first phase is you're a novice, you're a beginner, you're trying to figure it out. You have this entrepreneurial itch. You want to do something for yourself, but you have no understanding of how to get it done. So I want to be able to create the value, the blueprints, the step-by-steps, the tips, the instructions to say, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then this is how you get to the point where you're confident enough to understand who my audience is, what product or service can I add value to them, how can I launch a company, what's the first step to launching the company. Those are the components of getting you off the ground, right? Getting that foot moving. Once you start building momentum in that space and you actually have a company, or you're in the phase of I'm going to launch this company, then you move into phase two. So phase two is where we really start to get to work, right? Where we're actually building a company around you. So like every year, I'll work with 4 to 5 creators and I'll help them craft and build an entire business, right? From the branding elements to the naming to the product to finding the manufacturers to bringing it to market and then, dealing with the agencies and all that stuff. So that entire journey is the product launch or brand launch phase. And then from there, you're in scale phase, right? You have a product in market, you have a service in market. How do you become a better leader? How do you market better? How do you connect with your audience? How do you launch new SKUs, new innovation? How do you listen to what they're telling you so you're able to provide the feedback to be able to improve your product or service? So these 3 phases take you from, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, all the way to like, I'm scaling this business so that I'm able to get to that point where I'm either exiting or I'm generating the revenue that I'm looking for on a monthly basis.
Now, I'm going to ask a very default, like a very standard question, but I'm curious for your take. So what would you say is the best approach for a business to sell products? Would that be to be physically in person or online, or the combination of both? Like, what is your take on products being sold in actual physical stores versus online e-commerce type of web shops?
Depends. You have to go back to who the brand is being built around, or what is the brand and what does it stand for, and who the ultimate consumer is. So we can run a couple different scenarios so that you can see how I would look at both sides. So scenario one, say that, let's stay on the topic of a creator, right? You have a couple million followers on Instagram. You have, 500,000 YouTube followers. You're active on TikTok. You have your Pinterest and all that stuff. And you are a beauty blogger, or you're someone who is always talking about how to prepare to go out and like how to look your best. And so then you're giving all this skincare and beauty advice, right? Yet you don't have your own product or brand. The first take to that is you are servicing valuable content that you are utilizing other people's products, right? You might be buying them. They might be giving them to you as promos for you to promote, and they're paying you on the promotion. You have data. You understand who you're speaking to. You understand how they're engaging with your content. And on average, the brand, that personal brand, that creator is making $1 out of the $5 that the brand is making, right? So what I'm trying to do is reverse that entire formula. I want the personal creator to make the $5 and be in control of how they're able to provide or create the product to the end consumer. So that would be, I would play that as a direct-to-consumer play. You open up an e-commerce store, and you're able to connect authentically already to your audience, right? And there's a bunch of tactics and things you have to put in place, right? From email journeys to proper captures on the website to being able to have the right customer service, understand how to get the feedback. There's a lot that has to happen on the direct-to-consumer business model, but I would say it's a direct-to-consumer play. It's a Shopify store. It's an e-commerce play, right? There is no reason to go to retail just yet. But the moment you are at a scale point or a tipping point, you can then lean on a strategic retail partner. Say, for example, Feastables. Feastables, when they launched direct to consumer and they really started to engage with their audience, they said, okay, where is our customer going to, or what's the footprint of stores that has the largest nationwide presence? And so they partnered with 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven has 15,000 locations worldwide, franchise and corporate. So when you think about that footprint, you're literally able to deal with a single retail partner that can place you in that many doors. You are accessible to every typical consumer, and now you're driving traffic to the retail store, right? So now you're going to allow them to have a secondary touch point. So if they're on the road, they're driving, they can stop at a 7-Eleven, boom, they can pick up the product, right? That's a strategic move to bring back value to the brand and add a secondary level of revenue. But I would start direct to consumer because you can control that and you have your highest margins. And then there's other plays, right, where the business is more like aimed at a specific topic or strategy that is just solving a problem. But there's a relationship with a retail partner because there's a gap in that retail partner's offerings. And so if you're presenting, say we're presenting to Vitamin Shop on a product and they don't have a donut in their shelves. And we say, hey, here's a unique opportunity to go direct and launch the product with a retailer because the retailer can add the direct-to-consumer kind of like push as well. So you launch on your direct-to-consumer. As you launch on a retail, both of them support each other. And now you're able to create a little bit of awareness back to the site and back to the store because it's a new SKU in market that excites the retailer. But most of the time, you want to have value on your side. So you want to be the brand that says, oh, no, like I don't need you, retailer, but together we could be more successful, right? The retailer wants to get people to come through their doors. And the right way is you have to build that community first before you say, hey, let's start going to the retailer. Because if you get product on a retail shelf and it doesn't move and it sits there, they're kicking you out because that's money. Every position in a retail store has to turn money. There's a velocity to it.
And how much do you think this all has been changed over the last few years where, from a consumer perspective, that interest in buying products related to a certain creator, certain brand, that, person they look up to, whatever that could be, how much, is this impacting the whole industry in general? Like, what role does that truly play for consumers to, have that interest in specific type of brands rather than, the bigger brands like Coca-Cola or whatever that could be?
There is 92% of brands that are currently using influencer marketing. And if you think about that for a second, that means that the entire dynamic and power shift has come to the creator's hands and will continue to be pushed into the creator's hands over time. I would see that if you're not using creators, right, influencers, however you want to call them, right, they've been able, and even micro, right, like micro influencers, large, it's not just the large scale influencers. You can have 2, 3, 5,000 followers. Your engagement, the authenticity that you're able to speak to that community is so strong that having hundreds, thousands of those micro influencers could almost be more powerful than having a single influencer. Two different strategies, but at every level, influencers are impacting the entire consumer packaged goods space. So today, you're seeing distributors that are losing traction because they no longer, before they were the ones that had the retail like relationships, right? They were the ones that were able to get you on the shelves of XYZ store because they liked your brand or they wanted to support you. Today, they're almost on the backside saying, man, I need the brand that has the influencer because they're going to help me go secure the retail partner because I can go tell that retail partner, hey, Target, this brand is with XYZ influencer creators and they're driving this much natural organic traffic. They're going to be able to drive that traffic to your store. Now the retailer's excited. And so then the actual power shift has gone, almost, I would say, all the way. It's all the way in the creators and the influencer side, right? And so for me, I really am trying to push and drive that awareness to them because, yes, the brands are using them and paying them today, but there's a lot of them that have the ability to launch their own and be the next big brand. So that power shift is changing.
And why does it then matter so much to have that strong brand right now? And what does that really mean? Like, what is the stage of that brand creator that can bring that influence? Because you mentioned there's some sort of engagement, right? Like a certain person will have a certain influence in a target audience or whatever that could be. But why is that so important really? And what does it really mean to have a strong brand? Like what parameters are you looking at in order to know if somebody has, that qualified brand?
Again, but going back, there's different strategies, right? So it depends on how you're looking at it. But if you just look at from the base, what is an influencer? An influencer is just someone who has influence over people or could influence someone, right? That can get someone to feel something. And that feeling that person gets is the ability to drive first the emotion, which then creates the action. And the ability to signal or spark an emotion in another human being, whatever that may be, whether it's motivation or whether it's the ability to like apply cosmetics or whether it's the ability, it's because the person has an emotional trigger, because now you're showing me how to apply cosmetics, which is going to make me look prettier or make me look better. And so in that scenario, I am getting a value from that content that you're creating. There is content out there that might garner views or likes that adds no true value. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about the value that triggers an emotional response that allows that person to take action or that makes that person want to take action for a positive good in their life. And I believe that that's the true unlock. It's not everybody, but that's why a micro influencer that might have 3,000 or 4,000 people there's a guy that weighed 300 pounds and just started documenting his journey, and he lost 70, 80 pounds over the course of X amount of time, and he's got 5,000 people that have followed that journey. There's an inspiration factor. There's people that are there for him that are rooting him on and they're fans of his, right? And if the guy turns around and says, man, like this is what actually got me here. Like I was able to like lose it because I had an online coach that kept me accountable, and this was the online app that I used, and this was the morning workout coffee blend that I used to get me up and motivated for the day, and it had these active ingredients, or this is the nighttime recovery thing that I took so that I could recover my body. Like you start to like almost inspire the purchase action because the emotional trigger and the story and the connection are so strong. And so you can look at the influence over emotions that allow you to take actions as the true root of what creates a great brand. And the more that the brand story aligns with the influencer or the personality story, that's where that beautiful cohesion kind of comes in. And that's where you get true value to the end consumer. That's what creates a powerful brand. When the influencer stories are matched up or the personalities match up with the brand story.
That's super powerful. And I have one more question to close it off here. So I'm very curious from your perspective and your expertise. What is your main expectations for businesses, specifically in US as well as worldwide, for the next coming decades? Think about the next 10, 20, 30 years. What are you thinking of? What changes, what pivots do you think are going to happen in all kinds of industries?
So I think one of the biggest impact is that there will be a push for more localized U.S.-based manufacturing, production, businesses, business support, grants. You're going to feel the stimulus over the next few years that could hopefully re-spark that American kind of like excitement in, and we'll get into the worldwide, but I'm just talking specifically for my market. I think that's going to be one of the most powerful shifts. But there will be a ripple effect that happens worldwide. So if you're able, that as well as AI, right? And AI has been this, constant topic, and everybody talks about it, and all this, evolution that's happening, and tons of money, and right, NVIDIA is like stock is through the roof, and they're creating the most powerful supercomputers and chips and all that stuff. But if you just look at like the underlying impact that the next decade or so is going to have, I believe that entrepreneurs will feel more enticed to take a bet on themselves because they will be in an environment that can support them on their journey. I think that's really, really exciting. I also believe that the digital age today is going to change like it did in the 2000s and the late 90s with computers and internet. It'll change at an even faster rate with the combination of supercomputing, AI, and the combination of all of that. So if you're right now kind of thinking, okay, what do I do? Where do I set up? How do I take my first step? How do I go into an industry that allows me to have the biggest upside? Imagine, like, put yourself 10, 15 years ago and say, what was the biggest thing that happened in the world that created the biggest impact, and where would you like to go? And all of the businesses that were built around the internet, all of them, they became multi-billion-dollar industries. And if you can create things today around that next wave, which could technically be, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but I'm saying these things could be that. It's AI or supercomputing or the ability to automate. If you're able to lean into that and build businesses around that, over time, you're going to see that 7, 10, 15 years from today, it is a completely different animal. And since you built the infrastructure and the setup within that world, as that world grows, you will grow.
Amazing. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time. I think it was a super insightful conversation. Is there anything else you want to share before we close it off?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I got one more thing. I think if you're listening and you're still here, it means that you care. You care about yourself, you care about what you want out of life, and you're willing to take a bet and learn. And I think one of the most valuable traits that I can attribute my success to is that I am a true learner, even till today. I don't think I know it all. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how many times I've done it. I literally want to absorb knowledge from everyone and everything and all the experiences. I look at the good in everything, even when I fail. And I think that if you're just you persevere through everything, and it sounds stupid, but you just don't give up. You just keep chasing your dreams, and you are aware that it's going to take you years. It's going to take you years to get to what you want. And when you get there, you're going to want something at another level. So the chase is truly the gold. The build is the gold. The journey is the gold. And the moment you realize that, and you can sit into it saying, I am doing right now what I'm supposed to be doing, and you're constantly progressing one step, little by little, even just progressing 1% better every single day, you are winning at life.
Beautiful. I think it's a very powerful statement and very helpful, very insightful. So once again, appreciate your being here, and for everybody checking in, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate you.